What's going on YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Pico.Blurred. I'm a barber content creator and I make content for anybody that wants to learn how to cut hair, that wants to know about the tools and the accessories in the barber industry. So if that sounds like something that you'd be interested in, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you can stay up to date on all the latest posts and content drops. But in this video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to do a drop fade on 3-month-long hair. My client had gone about 3 months without getting a haircut from me, so his hair was pretty long, it was pretty bulky, and it just was not doing it for him. So I'm going to show you guys the step-by-step process on how to tackle this hair transformation. If you guys are new to cutting straight hair, you're going to want to make sure that you stay in this video and watch the whole process from the fade to the shears on top, just to be able to give your client the best haircut possible under these conditions. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this tutorial. All right, you guys can see what his hair is looking like. That's about 3 months of growth for him. It turns into this curly kind of mop up top, super bulky all around. He hates when it gets that long because he can't really do much with it. It's just so poofy. So we're gonna go ahead and get started by saturating my client's hair with water just to prepare ourselves for our shear work. Now, when we're doing shear work, it's best to saturate the hair with water just so you have the most manageability of the hair. And so I took a mohawk section down the middle just to create my guideline for the rest of the haircut. And once I was done with that guideline down the middle, I'm gonna take it to both sides. So I take it down to the right, and as I'm going back, I'm pulling up the middle guideline with some new hair towards the right side so I can begin to connect the top. We're cutting everything to that length of the initial guideline down that right side, and as we do the right side, we just mirror that on the left. So I'm gonna cut the whole top using that guideline, really taking the time to make sure that everything is even on top. Once I'm happy with how the top turned out, with the evenness up top, the shape, I'm ready to start the fade on the bottom. So right here, I'm taking my number 4 guard and it's all the way closed. I'm just clearing out bulk to set myself up for my fade. And as I'm doing this, you kind of notice that I'm scooping out towards the top. That's me trying to blend into what I already cut with the shears to set myself up for success. If I just go in and I start cutting hair that I don't want to, then I'm changing and I'm erasing the work that I already did up top with the shears. So I really am just trying to blend in this number 4 near the parietal ridge into the shear work that I did up top. I'm not trying to take that away. So again, I'm clearing bulk to be able to see my fade steps, but I'm also blending into the top. That way I don't have to do as much work later on. The shear work set me up for the shape of this fade, so now I'm just blending into it. So once I'm done creating the shape on my sides, it's time to tackle our fade steps. The first step is going to be to use your trimmers to set in your initial bald line. Now I like to use my trimmers because it gets the hair as close to skin as possible, and it's very precise. If I try to set this in with my clippers, the clippers are generally pretty big, the blade is pretty big, so I have to be extra careful when I'm doing this step. But with my trimmer, it's small and it's really precise, so I know that I can get a very clean and very uniform and precise guideline all the way around the head. I really take my time to make sure this step is really clean because it's the base of my fade. If I do this step very precise and clean, I know that the rest of my fade is going to be just as precise and clean. So I set it in with the trimmer and then I clear out all the bulk underneath, flipping over my trimmer to clear out to skin. And if you guys are wondering what tool I'm using the Barber Chameleon FX trimmer with the chameleon blade on it, and I do have it 0 gapped. The reason I like mine 0 gaps is because it gets the closest cut, and I know that I can take it out because all of my tools are set exactly how I want them to be. So I don't worry about getting out that initial bald line. I know that my clippers are going to be able to do the job. So I like using my trimmers. It's the closest thing to skin without using a shaver. And I usually don't use a shaver on him because his hair isn't super dense. I can get away with getting it really bald with just my trimmers, but I have mine set exactly as sharp as I want them without being too sharp to where it's damaging his skin. All right, it's time for our first guideline, and that's using my clipper with the lever all the way open, and I'm going up about a finger's width on the side. I go up a little bit more on the back because we have a lot more room to work with. So you guys will see that the guideline in the back is a little bit thicker than the sides. Again, you guys see how much space is in the back of the head. We have a lot more space to work with and to fade out. So to be able to get that as gradient as possible, I'm gonna take it a little bit thicker of a guideline in the back. And I'm using my Low Pro FXs with the wedge blade. Again, these are 0 gap. So when I go in to blend out this guideline, I'm not gonna have any trouble removing that initial bald line. So if you guys are new and don't have set tools, I would recommend not putting in your initial guideline, your bald guideline like that. I would use the trimmer either in an upward motion or use your clippers to set in that initial guideline. But again, I'm using the clipper, I set in my guideline, and now it's time to blend that area out. So as I go down into my guideline, I'm closing the lever little by little until I get to the bottom line, and that's when my clipper should be all the way closed, and you're just flicking out that line. I'm not using 100% of my blade. I'm really only using 1/3 of the corner, and that's what's gonna allow the clipper to cut every other hair versus using the whole blade and then it's cutting way too much hair at one time. So you really gotta focus on using your corners when you're doing your blending and fading out step. But again, I'm starting all the way at the top of my guideline and I'm closing the lever each notch until I'm at the bottom where my clipper should be all the way closed. And you guys will see that line start to disappear. I'm doing this fade in real time. It's not sped up or anything, just so you guys can see how that line really comes out in real time. And fading is really finding your own process, your own kind of rhythm when you're using your clipper. I like to go kind of like in an etching, erasing motion. So I'll start open and I'll do a pass in this small section. And in that same small section, I go down and I close the lever. I go hit another pass. Then I go down and I close the lever, hit another pass. And I'm only doing it in small sections. If I was trying to fade from the back all the way to the side of his head, that's just too much area for me to work in to try to fade that all out at once. So I like to go in small sections until that area is blended out. And the way I fade, I don't move on to the next guideline until I'm happy with that first guideline. So I was happy with the blend, so I moved on to this second guideline. I'm using my 1.5 guard all the way closed, and again, I'm following the same shape and same width as my first guideline, as the initial guideline. So again, I'm going up about a finger's width, maybe 2, spreading out this guideline. And as you guys notice, towards the top, I'm kind of flicking out because I don't want to create a super harsh line up towards the top. That's going to be hard for me to take out. I kind of want to use this guideline step as a start to blending in towards the top. So I'm already going ahead and flicking out and blending into the bulk up top. And once that guideline is put in, it's time to blend that out. To blend that out, I like to use my half guard all the way open. And again, as I go down in that guideline, I'm closing the lever little by little until the line disappears. Going in small sections, I'm probably only blending in like an inch area from left to right. So I'm blending out all the way until that line is gone at the bottom, and then I move to the next square inch of hair that needs to be blended out. always doing this every single time. My process never changes no matter what haircut I'm doing. So you have to find a process that you're comfortable with, that you can master, and you're gonna wanna use that every single time, because without fail, you're gonna know your process. You're gonna be able to get through this haircut in a decent time, and every time you know your steps, so you're not gonna get lost in your haircutting process. But you gotta find something that works for you. This is what works for me, is setting in the guideline and immediately taking out. But that might not work for you. You need to find something that works for you. This is just my process. It works best for me. I found that it's the best way for me to get these haircuts done. But again, I'm going and I'm only using the corners of my guard, and I'm blending out all the way down until that bottom line is gone. You guys can see that blend coming together. It's looking pretty gradient. The transition's looking nice. There's not really any lines that I need to take out in my detail work section. So I like to get a decent blend, and then after the haircut is done, I'll come back and do some detail work if I miss any spots or if I miss any lines, and get that taken out. But I like to run through this fade, make sure everything is looking really gradient, just so I don't have to do as much work at the end. And at this point, you guys might be wondering, well, why didn't you use the one guard in between the half and the 1.5? Well, the way that my guards are set up, and his hair especially, it's not hard to blend. So I can take my 1.5 guard and my half guard and blend them seamlessly. If you guys are new to this hair texture, you might need to use every single guard in your arsenal. So instead of using the 1.5 guard to set the guideline and then going into the half guard, you might need to use your one guard and soften that area and then finish out with the half guard. Or you can set in the guideline with your one guard and take it out with your half guard, and then do like I'm doing right here and use my 1.5 guard to really soften the bulk above that guideline. So it's all up to you on what you prefer to use. If you guys are new to this, I recommend using every single guard in your system. But here I'm trying to blend in between the 1.5 and the bulk up top. You know, the bulk we used our number 4, so I'm softening everything using my corners. I have the lever open, going up into and blending into that bulk, and then as I go down, I'm closing halfway, and then I close it all the way at the bottom, and you guys will see this bulk start to soften and start to blend into that number 4 that we left off in. I didn't use any 2 guard or anything, because with my guard system, I'm able to blend straight from my 1.5 into that 4 up top because of my pressure and because of how I'm flicking out into that bulk area. Now let's put myself in the shoes of a brand new barber, and I'm scared to tackle this bulk. How am I supposed to blend in from that 1.5 into the 4? So I would start actually with my number 4 and close it little by little, blending down. Then I would take my number 3 guard lever open, and the same thing that we did blending out those lines, I would close it little by little in that guideline. And then after my number 3, I've used my number 2 guard lever open and close it little by little until we're all the way at that 1.5 guard length, and everything should be blended in. But again, I already know my system, I know my steps, I know that I can skip those guards. But if you're brand new to this, I would recommend starting with your 4 and blending down until you reach that 1.5 guard length that you left off with your second guideline. That's what these guards are made for. The guards blend directly into each other. So if you ever have trouble in an area, you can always start with a guard higher, and then if you don't hear anything cutting, if you don't see anything cutting, then you can go down a guard. But that's why the guards are set up for it to be easy to blend into each other. And so here, I saw a bit of bulk in the shape that I didn't like, so I'm just making sure that anything that's sticking out past our shape area is cut and into a 90-degree. I want to make this a square shape, a square silhouette. So I'm taking and pulling out hair, connecting the number 4 bulk into the top. So how to do that is I bring it past the parietal ridge, and anything that's sticking out between the top of the head and the number 4 bulk on the side, I just cut off anything that's hanging above that. And now to really soften out this bulk area and thin it out a little bit just so it blends in a bit nicer, I'm using texturizing shear or thinning shear over comb, and that's really going to soften any dark spots, any bulk that I don't want in that bulk area. And you'll see that any dark spots or any lines that I found, it's gonna be able to soften that and blend it in. And even then, I still have some detail work to do because I wasn't liking how this side was blending into the bulk. So I take my 1.5 guard again, and I'm just using my corners detailing until those dark spots are gone. And here I found a little bit of overhang, so I'm using clipper over comb to refine that shape and really fine tune that square shape going towards the back. But as you guys can see, that blend is coming together. It's a really strong blend, especially from how it started to now where we're at in that blend. And he's never asked me to do his beard before. I was like, you know, if you go in this long without seeing me, let's go ahead and clean up and give you a proper full service. So I'm blending in the beard, and the way to do that is you kind of fade in the opposite direction. So I go from down and I blend up. So I use my half guard and I blend it up closed, and then now I'm using no guard and I start open, and as I go up, I'm closing the lever little by little. So it's really the opposite of your fade. Instead of blending and closing as you go down, I'm blending and closing as I go up. And now to really refine and dictate the shape of our beard, I'm using my trimmer, making sure that the edge up is really crisp and really sharp. And I don't take it too high up. I keep it very natural where his beard line already was. If I took it up too high, it might change the way that his jaw looks, and I want to give him a full jawline and a full beard area. So I'm keeping it fairly low, giving him a nice silhouette for his jawline, because he doesn't have the strongest jawline, but the way that we can make it look strong is if we have a sharp edge up on the bottom neckline. And I don't like to use trimmer to edge up the top of the beard, so I go straight to straight razor. I think that's the sharpest way, or the best way to get the sharpest line possible. And for him, I had to use shaving gel. I usually use shaving gel on all my clients. It just makes it easier for the razor to glide across the skin. But now we're getting to the end of our haircut, so what we want to do is grab our alcohol and make sure that all the area is nice and sanitized so he doesn't get any infections or any razor bumps. But this is how my client came in, looking desperate in need for a haircut, and this is how he's leaving. Just look at that blend, look at that transformation. He is definitely looking reborn after this haircut. The shape suits him well, the beard is looking nice and crisp, the fade is looking blurry. So we definitely did our job at the end of the day. Y'all go ahead and check out my other tutorials if you need help on different haircuts. YouTube thinks you're gonna like this one, but it's your boy Pico.Blurred. I'll catch you guys on the next tutorial.